The text lit up my phone under the dining table. Stand up and leave. Right now. Don't say a word to your son. For a moment, the words didn't register. I stared at the glowing screen, the capital letters harsh against the dim chandelier light above. I'd only taken 2 sips of whiskey, yet my head already felt heavier than it should. Olivia's smile gleamed at me from across the table, Michael's hand resting on my shoulder like we were finally a family again. But that message, urgent, anonymous, made my stomach twist. I forced myself to look normal, slipping the phone back into my jacket pocket. Bathroom, I muttered when Michael asked if I was okay. He pointed down the hall with that same too bright grin. I pushed my chair back slowly, trying not to stumble. My heart pounded like I'd run 3 flights of stairs. And as I walked, my mind spun back to the beginning. How the hell had I ended up here? Just hours earlier, I'd been standing at my kitchen sink in South Philly, washing Elaine's favorite coffee cup. Same ritual every evening. 1 plate, 1 fork, 1 mug. My solitary dinnerware set. That mug was more shrine than dish. I kept it spotless, as if scrubbing it 3 times a week could somehow keep her close. Without Elaine humming in the kitchen, without her voice telling me I'd left newspapers on the table again, the house felt cavernous. The phone had rung then, sharp enough to startle me into dropping the towel. The caller ID froze me. Michael, my son. We hadn't spoken in more than a year. Not since the night he stormed out after I refused to loan him money for another can't-miss investment. I almost didn't answer. Then Elaine's photo on the fridge caught my eye, her arm draped around him at graduation, both of them smiling like the future was theirs for the taking. I lifted the receiver. Dad? Michael's voice was tentative, the same tone he used when he cracked a window with a baseball as a kid. Michael. My own voice came out rough. Yeah, it's me. I know it's been too long. Olivia and we miss you. She's making pot roast tonight. Your favorite. We want to talk. No more wasted time. Will you come? I gripped the counter, stunned. That word family still had power. Elaine always said families eventually circle back to each other. Maybe this was our chance. What time? I heard myself say, 7. I'll text you the address. We moved to Short Hills last year. It's nice here, Dad. Really nice. His voice cracked, relief spilling through the line. Thank you for giving us another chance. When I hung up, the kitchen felt different. Less empty. Elaine's whisper seemed to hang in the air. It's time, Harold. It's time to go home. I'd showered and pulled out the navy suit Elaine bought me for Michael's high school graduation. She'd insisted, you need something sharp for important nights. It had seen anniversaries, job interviews, and her funeral. Tonight, it would have to carry me through reconciliation. The mirror caught me off guard. Gray had conquered my temples. The lines around my eyes were deeper. Would Michael even notice how much older I'd gotten? I dabbed on aftershave, ignoring the half-full perfume bottle Elaine left on her dresser. Too sacred to touch. The Uber ride over the bridge was filled with the driver's chatter about baseball and the weather, but I barely heard him. The neighborhoods shifted from row homes to manicured estates. By the time we reached Short Hills, I was staring out at houses big enough for 3 families, lawns sculpted into symmetry. Then his address appeared. A mansion, stone columns, circular drive around a fountain that threw water into the air for no reason except to show it could. A Mercedes and a BMW parked like ornaments. My throat tightened. Beautiful place, the driver remarked, handing me back my change. Yeah, I muttered. Beautiful. I stepped onto the immaculate walkway. Lights flicked on automatically, tracking me like I was on stage. Before I could reach for the brass knocker, the oak door swung open. A woman in a black dress, silver in her hair, smiled faintly. Not family, house staff. Mr. Bennett? Amana, please come in. They're waiting. Behind her, I heard Michael's voice echoing from the grand hallway. Dad, you made it. I had no idea then that by the end of the night, I'd be slipping out of that house in a panic, heart racing, ears ringing, because of a text that told me to run. The foyer looked like something out of a magazine. Marble tiles stretched toward a staircase that seemed more decorative than functional, crystal chandeliers casting little rainbows across the walls. Fresh flowers filled the air with perfume too perfect to be fake. My entire living room back in South Philly could have fit inside this entryway twice over. "Dad!" Michael strode down the hallway like a man who belonged in this kind of place. He was dressed in a tailored suit I'd never seen before, hair cut sharp, smile too wide. He hugged me tight, holding on a beat too long. "You look great," he said, though his eyes scanned me the way people do when they're measuring something. Then Olivia appeared, sweeping across the marble in a silk dress that shimmered with every step. The scent of her perfume hit before her kiss brushed my cheek. "Harold," she said, warm and practiced at the same time. "We're so glad you're here. Tonight is special. A new beginning." I managed to smile, still clutching the bottle of rye I'd brought. "Thought we might share a drink," I said. Michael's face lit up like I just handed him the keys to the place. "Perfect. Dad, you shouldn't have." He took the bottle, cradling it like treasure. Anna, the housekeeper, took my coat with another of those faint, careful smiles. There was something in her eyes, concern, maybe pity, but it vanished the moment she turned toward the closet. "Come," Olivia said, linking her arm through mine as if we were old friends. "Dinner's ready." We wanted it to feel like home. The dining room was staged like a set from a period drama. A polished mahogany table stretched nearly the length of the room, gleaming under another chandelier. China plates with gold rims. Silverware lined up with surgical precision. Crystal glasses that probably cost more than the couch I'd been sitting on for 20 years. This is... I searched for the right word. Incredible. Only the best for family, Olivia said smoothly. Michael uncorked the rye with a flourish, already pouring it into tumblers heavier than any glass I owned. He handed me one filled almost to the brim. "A toast," he announced. Olivia lifted her wine glass, her smile radiant. "To family, to forgiveness and fresh starts." Michael added quickly, "And to Mom. She would have wanted this." His voice wavered at the mention of Elaine, though I couldn't tell if it was grief or performance. The whiskey burned sweetly, settling warm in my chest. For a moment, I let myself believe this could be real, that maybe Elaine had been right, that families could circle back no matter how far they strayed. Dinner began with appetizers plated like art. Little towers of cheese and vegetables so delicate I was almost afraid to touch them. Anna brought them out in silence, moving with the precision of someone who knew exactly how things were supposed to look. Her hands shook slightly when she set a plate before me. Michael leaned close. "So, Dad, tell us, how are the diners doing?" Olivia added, her tone casual but eyes sharp. 7 locations, right? Michael says you built them all from scratch." I chuckled, feeling a mix of pride and awkwardness. "Nothing fancy. Just hard work and people who came back for good coffee and pancakes. Elaine always said to treat employees like family and customers like friends. That's all there is to it." "Don't be modest," Michael insisted, topping off my glass before I realized I'd finished it. 7 successful businesses is impressive by any standard. The second glass went down easier than the first. The warmth spread further, loosening the edges of my thoughts. I hadn't had more than a drink or 2 in months, and yet 2 glasses felt like 4. "Do you ever think about retirement?" Olivia asked, slicing her bread with delicate precision. I frowned. "The restaurants keep me busy. They're what Elaine and I built together. Not something you walk away from overnight." Michael and Olivia exchanged a glance, one of those quick, silent communications couples master over years. Olivia reached for my hand, her fingers cool. "But you can't work forever, Harold. At some point, don't you want to rest?" Anna entered again, carrying a steaming platter of pot roast. The smell hit me like a memory, Elaine's recipe almost exact. How Olivia knew that, I couldn't guess. We'd shared so few meals together over the years. "This is perfect," I admitted truthfully, my throat tightening. "Just like Elaine used to make." Olivia's painted smile didn't falter. "We wanted tonight to be special. To remind you that family takes care of family. The conversation flowed, but their questions were oddly specific about profits, property values, what kind of legal arrangements I had in place. I brushed them off as curiosity, though the whiskey made it easier to talk more than I usually would. At one point, I caught Michael checking his watch when he thought I wasn't looking. Olivia monitored my glass like a bartender, refilling it before I even asked. Anna dropped a fork on the marble floor, the clatter making me jump. She looked pale, her eyes darting toward me before quickly lowering them. Something wasn't right. The food, the wine, the questions, it all felt rehearsed, like they were guiding me somewhere. But the whiskey blurred the edges of my thoughts, making it hard to pin down the unease. By the time dessert was mentioned, my head felt heavier than it should have after just 2 drinks. The room swayed slightly when I shifted in my chair. Olivia's voice floated toward me, honey smooth. "You look pale, Harold. Maybe some water?" That was when my phone buzzed in my pocket, a vibration sharp enough to cut through the fog. I slid it out under the table, shielding the screen with my napkin. And there it was, the message that would change everything. "Stand up and leave. Right now. Don't say a word to your son." I pushed my chair back carefully, every motion deliberate. "Bathroom?" I muttered, hoping my voice didn't betray how fast my pulse was climbing. Michael pointed down the hallway, his smile fixed like plaster. "Second door on the left. We'll wait." The chandelier light dimmed behind me as I stepped into the hallway. My head swam, but the fog felt wrong, thicker than whiskey should have made it. I steadied myself on the wall, breathing slow. Elaine used to say, "When your gut screams, listen before you ask questions." The hallway stretched ahead, lined with expensive paintings and recessed lighting that cast everything in a soft glow. Each step sounded louder than it should, leather shoes clicking on marble. "Second door on the left," that was where Michael had pointed. But the text in my pocket pulsed like a heartbeat. "Stand up and leave. Now." I walked right past the second door. At the end of the hall, swinging doors led into what had to be the kitchen. I pushed through quietly. Stainless steel counters, double ovens, a refrigerator the size of my first apartment. Anna stood at the sink, washing crystal glasses with steady, practiced movements. Her back was to me, but I could see her shoulders tighten the moment I entered. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge me at all, just kept scrubbing, the sponge squeaking faintly against the glass. The kitchen's back door stood 10 feet away, a straight line to freedom. My throat tightened. If she wanted to stop me, she could have. Instead, she moved just slightly to the side, as though making space. My suspicion hardened into certainty. Anna knew. I pushed through the back door into a manicured lawn. Motion lights blinked on, spilling white across trimmed hedges and perfectly edged grass. The cold night air slapped my face, cutting through the haze. I walked faster, shoes slipping slightly on dew-slick stone. At the end of the yard, a gate opened onto a quiet residential street. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and opened the rideshare app. Pick up in 6 minutes. 6 minutes suddenly felt like a lifetime. As I waited near the curb, the mansion glowed behind me. Too perfect, too still. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A voice, calm and neutral. "Mr. Bennett, I hoped you'd listen." My mouth went dry. "Who is this?" "I can't tell you, but I know you were in danger tonight." I gripped the phone tighter. "That's impossible. I was having dinner with my son." A pause. Then, "Your son owes 7 figures to the wrong people. People who don't forgive late payments. Tonight was their solution. The whiskey you brought, it was tampered with. A sedative mixed with alcohol. Enough to lower your defenses and make you compliant." The world tilted. "That's no. He wouldn't." Legal documents were prepared. Transfer of your businesses. Power of attorney. All they needed was your signature. Under the drug's effects, you'd have agreed to anything. Later, you wouldn't even remember saying yes. I closed my eyes, hearing Elaine's voice from long ago. "Family doesn't always mean safe. How do you know this?" I whispered. The voice remained steady. Because I'm inside that house. I see what happens. And I couldn't stay silent. My stomach lurched. Anna. It had to be Anna. The driver pulled up, headlights cutting through the dark. I climbed into the back seat, giving my Philadelphia address with a voice that barely sounded like mine. As the car pulled away, my phone vibrated again, this time with Michael's number flashing across the screen. I didn't answer. Couldn't. The voice's warning echoed in my head as the mansion disappeared behind us. Desperate people make desperate choices. Your son isn't finished. The city lights of Philadelphia glimmered across the river as the Uber rolled silently toward my row house. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, trying to steady my breathing. My phone lit up again, Michael's number, for the third time. I turned it face down on the seat. "Sir," the driver said gently, catching my eyes in the rearview mirror. "You doing okay back there?" I lied without hesitation. "Yeah, just a long night." In truth, I felt like I'd stepped out of my own life and into someone else's nightmare. My son. My only son. Elaine's pride and joy. Could he really have looked me in the eye, poured me whiskey, and waited for me to sign my life away? Back at my house, I bolted the door behind me and sank into the armchair Elaine had picked years ago. The one that still fit the shape of my back perfectly. The silence was deafening. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Michael. "Dad, where are you? We're worried sick." I stared at the message, my chest burning. Worried sick. The same son who, minutes earlier, had been ready to drug me senseless and walk away with everything Elaine and I had built. I deleted the message without replying. The anonymous number called again. My hands shook as I answered. "You got out," the voice said evenly. "Yes." My voice cracked. "But I need more than your word. Tell me why. Tell me how you know all this." The pause stretched long enough that I thought they'd hung up. Then, "Your son has borrowed against everything he could. His house, cars, even business contacts he doesn't actually have. Gambling, high-stakes poker, offshore betting sites. He's down millions. The people he owes don't care about excuses. They gave him 2 weeks. That deadline is almost here." My throat went dry. "And you're telling me his plan, Olivia's plan, was to use me?" "Yes, the documents were already drafted. Power of attorney, transfers. All it needed was your signature. And with the sedative in your system, you would have signed." I closed my eyes, picturing Michael's eager smile, Olivia's smooth voice, the way she refilled my glass without asking. It all replayed with horrifying clarity. "Why help me?" I whispered. A faint sigh came through the line. "Because what they planned was wrong. You don't deserve this." I swallowed hard. "Anna?" Silence, then a soft, almost imperceptible, "Be careful, Mr. Bennett. They'll realize soon that you're gone. And when desperation tightens, they'll try again." The call ended before I could say thank you. I sat in the armchair until dawn, the whiskey haze finally wearing off. My thoughts sharpened into something cold. Michael hadn't just made mistakes. He'd crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. By morning, I was making lists. Elaine used to tease me for writing everything down, but that habit had saved me more than once. I called my lawyer first thing. No voicemail, no delays. I told him to lock down every account, every property, every diner deed. Everything had to require my signature in person. No exceptions. Then I called my banker. I'd known Lawson for years, long enough to trust him. I told him the same. Flag anything unusual. Freeze accounts if necessary. I didn't go into details, I couldn't. But he heard the weight in my voice. "Understood, Mr. Bennett," he said. "We'll set up red alerts." By the time the sun was fully up, the first steps were in place. My phone buzzed again at noon. Another message from Michael. "Dad, please call me. We just want to make sure you're okay. Olivia's worried." I stared at the screen, then set the phone down face first. If he was worried, it wasn't for me. It was for the plan unraveling faster than he'd expected. The thing about gamblers, Elaine used to say, is that they always think one more play will fix everything. Michael wasn't finished. I could feel it in my bones. And if he was desperate enough to try to steal from me once, he'd be desperate enough to try again. And this time I'd be ready. For the next 2 days, I kept my phone silent and my curtains drawn. Michael called 9 times. Olivia twice. Each voicemail carried the same syrupy concern. Dad, please, we're just worried. Call us back. Worried? No. They were scrambling. They needed my signature and I had walked away. Elaine's photo on the dresser seemed to watch me as I worked through my plan. They confused kindness with weakness. I whispered to her smile. Now they'll learn the difference. The first step was documentation. I dug out the small black notebook Elaine had convinced me to keep after she passed, where I'd tracked every diner expense, every loan, every dollar I'd lent Michael over the years. The pages told the story plain, years of generosity that had been twisted into entitlement. I photocopied everything at the FedEx office down the block. Copies went into a fireproof box I rented at the bank, along with a letter I handwrote for my lawyer. If anything happens to me, deliver these to the police immediately. The second step was surveillance. A friend of mine from church, Paul, did IT security for a living. He owed me more than a few favors from years back when he nearly lost his house and I helped him renegotiate his mortgage. I didn't give him the whole story, just enough. I need eyes on my house. Cameras. Discreet. By that evening, 2 pinhole cameras were tucked into my living room and office. Another motion sensor sat near the safe in my bedroom. All of it streamed to my phone. The third step was financial lockdown. Lawson at the bank called to confirm he'd added multiple layers of authentication. In-person signatures. Identity verification beyond passwords. My accounts were tighter than a vault. It was Friday evening when the first real crack showed. Michael's number popped up again. But this time the voicemail was sharper, edges showing through the sugar. Dad, this isn't funny. Olivia and we need to talk. Urgently. Call me back tonight. I didn't. Instead, I sat in my armchair watching the feed from the hidden cameras. Nothing happened that night, just the steady emptiness of my own house. But I knew patience was key. People get sloppy when they think time is running out. Saturday, I let myself walk to the corner store for milk. That's when I saw Michael's car parked half a block away. He wasn't inside, but I recognized the dented fender. They were circling. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Confrontation gives the other side control. Elaine used to tell me, never show your hand until you're ready to close the game. That night, around 10 p.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. The camera showed Michael standing there, Olivia behind him, both dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Michael leaned toward the door, his voice carrying through the hallway. Dad, please. We just want to see you. We're family. Olivia added softer. You left so suddenly. It scared us. Can we just talk? 5 minutes. I stayed silent in the dark. After a few minutes, Michael swore under his breath and they left. The next morning, my anonymous ally called again. The voice was low, measured. They're desperate. He missed another deadline. The loan sharks are circling. If they can't get your assets, they'll lose everything. My grip on the phone tightened. So they'll try again. Yes, and it may not be as subtle this time. I thought of Anna, silently moving glasses in the kitchen while I slipped out the back door. She'd risked herself to warn me. That loyalty couldn't be wasted. Then I'll be ready, I said. Sunday night, I pulled out the photocopies of my diner deeds, account statements, and the handwritten note Elaine had made years ago reminding me, always know where the money goes. I placed them neatly in a folder marked evidence. Then I sat back, watching the cameras on my phone. If Michael wanted to play games with my life, then I'd show him just how much of a teacher he still had for a father. And this time, the lesson would stick. It didn't take long. By Tuesday afternoon, the knock at my door came sharp and insistent. I checked the camera feed before answering. Michael stood there, folder in hand, Olivia beside him, her arms crossed like she was bracing for resistance. I opened the door just wide enough to lean against the frame. What's this? Michael forced a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Dad, we've been thinking. It's time to make things simpler. For you, for everyone. Just some paperwork. Nothing complicated. Olivia chimed in, voice smooth as silk. You've worked hard your whole life, Harold. It's time to put protections in place. In case something happens. Protections. That word alone soured my stomach. Michael lifted the folder, extending it toward me. It's just a joint account agreement. That way, if you ever can't handle things, Olivia and I can step in. Seamlessly. No headaches. One signature and it's done. I kept my expression flat, though my pulse quickened. This was it, the trap in daylight. I took the folder slowly, flipping through the pages as if I were just an old man struggling with small print. Inside was exactly what the anonymous caller had warned me about. A power of attorney hidden under legal jargon. A transfer of control disguised as convenience. I said, pretending to squint. My eyes aren't what they used to be. I'll need to get my reading glasses. Michael nodded eagerly. Of course, Dad. Take your time. I closed the door halfway, folder still in hand. In my office, I slid the pages onto the scanner Paul had set up. In less than 2 minutes, I had perfect digital copies. I placed the originals back neatly, smoothing the edges like I'd never opened them. Then I returned to the door. Let me sleep on it, I told them calmly. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Michael's smile widened too quickly. Olivia's eyes softened with what she wanted me to mistake for care. That's all we ask, Harold. Just think about it. They left down the walkway, their conversation hushed but animated. I didn't need to hear the words. Their walk said everything. They thought they'd already won. Inside, I sat at the desk staring at the copies glowing on my computer screen. Every clause, every line, exactly as the caller had described. They weren't just trying to help. They were trying to erase me. That night, I called Paul again. Can you make an edited version of this document? Identical in every way but with adjustments? He hesitated. You mean fake? Not fake, I corrected. Corrected. Protective. Something that looks like a win for them but keeps me in control. By morning, he delivered. A perfect replica with one buried clause. Any withdrawal required my authorization alone, and evidence of coercion would automatically revert all assets back to my sole ownership. Ironclad. When Michael and Olivia returned the next evening, I acted distracted, almost hesitant, like a man wrestling with doubt. All right, I sighed, handing them the folder. If this really makes things easier. Michael's eyes gleamed. Olivia leaned in, guiding my hand toward the pen. You won't regret it, Harold. This will give everyone peace of mind. I watched as they both signed without reading past the first page. Their smiles afterward could have lit a stadium. See, Michael said, clapping my shoulder. Now we're set. No more stress. Glad to hear it, I replied, voice steady, though inside I felt a calmness sharper than rage, because what they didn't realize was simple. In trying to trap me, they had just signed themselves into a corner. Later that night, I sat in my chair, folder of copies at my side, cameras still recording silently. The trap was closing, and this time I was the one pulling the strings. Elaine's photo watched from the mantel. I raised my glass of water toward her smile. Don't worry, I whispered. They won't take what we built. Not now. Not ever. For the next week, Michael and Olivia carried themselves like royalty. Their calls became less sugary, more businesslike. Michael spoke to me with the confidence of a man who thought the future was already his. Dad, we should meet with an advisor, he said over the phone one morning. Get everything streamlined. It'll make things smoother for you. I murmured agreement, knowing every word was being recorded by the tiny mic Paul had installed in my office. Olivia sent emails full of polite instructions, reminders to prepare documents, to transfer funds, to consider consolidating properties. Each one landed neatly in the folder I'd set up labeled evidence. What they didn't realize was that their signatures on my corrected contract had locked them out completely. They thought they had power. In reality, every move they made only added to the record of their intent. I let them believe it. I let them celebrate. On Thursday, I drove past their mansion in Short Hills, parking across the street like any other curious passerby. Through the camera lens on my phone, I zoomed in, catching them on their front lawn. Michael paced, phone to his ear, gesturing sharply. Olivia stood nearby, arms crossed, her jaw tight. Even from a distance, the strain showed. I wondered what the debt collectors had told him. The anonymous caller had been right. Desperation changes people. And Michael looked desperate enough to burn everything he touched. That night, another call came from the hidden number. Anna's voice was quiet, hurried. They believe you signed the papers. Michael is already talking about selling the diners. He thinks he can cash out before the debt catches him. My grip on the phone tightened. So he's planning to liquidate what isn't his. Yes, he has meetings set with buyers this weekend. But you're still safe for now. The clause you added protects you. Just be careful. If they discover what you did, they'll panic. Let them panic, I said evenly. I'm done being the fool. After we hung up, I sat in my office, staring at Elaine's picture. You were right, I murmured. Kindness isn't weakness. But they mistook it for that. And now they'll learn the difference. By Saturday, the stage was nearly set. My lawyer had copies of every document, every voicemail, every email. Paul had compiled camera footage into neat files labeled by date. All of it painted a picture too sharp to deny. Manipulation, coercion, fraud. I was no longer just protecting myself. I was building a case. Sunday afternoon, Michael and Olivia showed up unannounced. This time, they didn't bother with soft voices or pleading. Michael barged in the moment I opened the door. Dad, we need to talk. Now. His face was flushed, his tie loose. Olivia followed, lips pressed tight. This is serious, Harold. We don't have time for hesitation. I motioned calmly toward the living room. Then sit. Talk. Michael paced instead. The buyers are lined up. They're ready to move fast. We just need final confirmation from you. A signature here, a transfer there. You've already signed the big stuff, so this is just cleanup. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded over my stomach. You seem awfully sure of yourselves. Olivia's eyes narrowed. We're not playing games. This is about securing the future for all of us. I let the silence stretch until Michael snapped. Dad, if you don't cooperate, you'll regret it. You think we don't know what's best for you? You can't handle this on your own anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke. I kept my voice calm. Is that what you tell yourselves? That this is for me? Neither of them answered. When they finally stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame, I sat very still. The cameras had caught every word, every threat. Another file for the folder. And in that moment I knew. They thought the game was still theirs. But the checkmate was already in my hands. Monday morning, I sat across from my lawyer, Alan Hughes, in his walnut-paneled office. The man had represented me through 2 property disputes and 1 messy vendor lawsuit. He knew me well enough to recognize that today wasn't routine. I slid the thick folder across his desk. Read everything, slowly, then tell me if I'm crazy. He adjusted his glasses, flipping through the stack. Copies of the forged contracts, transcribed voicemails, stills from the camera footage Paul had compiled. The further he read, the tighter his jaw set. Harold, he said finally, voice low. This isn't paranoia. This is conspiracy to defraud. They intended to strip you of everything you own. The words landed like confirmation of what I already knew. Still, hearing them from someone else gave it weight. What do we do? I asked. Alan leaned back, steepling his fingers. We build the case airtight. Then we walk it into the district attorney's office. But I'll warn you, family or not, once this starts, it doesn't stop. Family. The word stung. I thought of Elaine, of how she believed Michael could do no wrong. How she would have tried to smooth things over. But Elaine was gone, and the man wearing my son's face wasn't the boy she raised. I'm ready, I said quietly. More than ready. By Wednesday, the DA's office had a full copy of the file. The investigator who took my statement, Detective Ross, was blunt. Mr. Bennett, we see cases like this all the time, usually from strangers, caretakers, not blood relatives. But intent is intent. They plan to incapacitate you and seize assets. That's criminal fraud and conspiracy. With your evidence, we've got teeth. Ross's words steadied me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. That evening, I received another call from the hidden number. Anna's voice was taut, hurried. They're frantic. Michael met with a man today, not a buyer, someone he owes. The debt collectors are pressing harder. He thinks selling your diners will save him. He doesn't realize yet that the documents he signed gave him nothing. Then he'll try again, I said. Yes, but now he's dangerous. If he feels cornered, he'll lash out. I thanked her softly. You saved me, Anna. I won't forget it. Her silence on the other end said more than words could. Then the line went dead. The next day, I staged my own move. Michael and Olivia showed up again. Their knocks loud enough to draw neighbors' curtains. This time, I let them in. The air between us was brittle. Michael dropped into a chair, leaning forward. Dad, listen. We don't have time for games. The buyers are ready. We need your cooperation. Olivia added, It's really for the best, Harold. You can't carry all this forever. Think about your health. Think about the future. I let them talk, watching their faces carefully. Then, calmly, I pulled the folder from the table drawer. Funny thing about paperwork, I said, sliding it across. When you read the fine print, sometimes it says the opposite of what you expect. Michael frowned, flipping pages. Olivia's hand hovered over his arm. Their expressions shifted. Confusion, dawning fear. What is this? Michael demanded. It's what you signed, I answered evenly. Every move you made, recorded, documented, secured. You thought you were clever, but all you did was leave a trail. For a moment, silence pressed the room. Then Michael slammed the folder shut. You don't understand. I didn't have a choice. They'll kill me if I don't pay. Olivia hissed, Michael! But he kept going, panic flooding his voice. You think I wanted this? I'm drowning, Dad. I just needed a way out. I stayed very still, letting the cameras catch every word. You had a choice, I said quietly. You could have asked for help. Instead, you tried to poison me and steal everything your mother and I built. Michael's face went pale. Olivia grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the door. We're done here, she snapped. As they stormed out, I didn't follow. The microphones had captured the confession. Another file for Detective Ross. That night, sitting in Elaine's chair, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Control. For the first time, the scales had tipped. Michael thought desperation gave him power, but in reality it had written his downfall. And I was ready to let justice finish the lesson. Detective Ross called at 2 p.m., his tone steady, almost casual. Mr. Bennett, it's happening. They're walking into the meeting right now with forged documents. We've got undercover officers inside. We'll let them hang themselves before moving in. I didn't leave the house. I sat at my kitchen table with Elaine's photo propped beside me, the old clock ticking loud in the silence. My phone buzzed once, Michael again. Dad, please, this is our last chance. Help us. I didn't answer. At 3:17 p.m., Ross called back. This time, there was no calmness in his voice, only sharp satisfaction. They tried to pass the paperwork. Olivia did the talking. Michael signed his name like he'd already won. The moment the documents hit the table, our guys moved in. Both arrested. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft. We've got it all on record. For a long moment, I said nothing. My hand gripped the phone tight enough to hurt. Ross continued. With the recordings you gave us, the emails, the signatures, you built this case airtight. The DA will push it hard. Honestly, Mr. Bennett, they'll be lucky if they see daylight in the next 10 years. 10 years. The words rang in my head. My son, the boy who once begged me to read The Little Engine that could every night, would now spend a decade behind bars. But then I remembered the whiskey glass in my hand that night, the way my vision swam, the way Olivia smiled as she poured, the folder of stolen power, and the grief hardened into something else. Not triumph, not relief, justice. 2 months later, I sat in the courtroom's back row as the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Michael's head dropped into his hands. Olivia's lips tightened, but her mask never broke. Not once did either of them turn to look at me. Ross had been right, the evidence was too much. The judge's words sealed it. Fraud, conspiracy, intent to incapacitate. Sentences handed down with finality. When the gavel struck wood, I felt something inside me finally settle. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. They had mistaken my patience for blindness. They had mistaken kindness for stupidity. But in the end, silence had been strategy. Patience had been planning. Kindness had been the mask I wore while I waited for the perfect moment. They wanted me powerless. Instead, they were the ones let out in shackles. That night, I returned to my house in South Philly. The same kitchen Elaine once filled with her humming was quiet again. But the silence felt different now. Stronger. I poured a single glass of rye, setting it across from Elaine's photo like always. "We did it," I whispered. They thought they'd bury me. Instead, they buried themselves. The clock ticked, steady and calm. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt victorious. Checkmate.